Hi, I'm Justin Hopson. I'm part of Hitachi's global social innovation business. I'm working at the intersection of electrification and fleet, and I'm here today to talk with Amanda Wood to understand the impacts of the U.S. infrastructure bill that passed the House and Senate has been signed by President Biden.
Thanks,
Amanda?
Justin. Thanks, Justin. I'm Amanda Wood. I'm based in DC. I'm a federal lobbyist and a federal funding consultant. My background is in Capitol Hill and really helping public agencies get their fair share of federal funding, helping them navigate the process, making sure that you're drawing down as much funding as possible to do some really ambitious work in your communities.
So Amanda, I want to talk to you about this historic infrastructure bill that has just passed the House and the Senate. And could you help me understand what are the investments that we're going to make as a result of this funding?
Sure, Justin. This is yet another sort of extraordinary influx of federal funding after 18 months of extraordinary federal investments in public spending. We've had, American Rescue Plan Act. We've had the CARES Act. We've had a number of other bills, and those have really been focused on sort of response and recovery. This bill is really ambitious and aims to make significant investments in infrastructure for public agencies. So we've sort of turned the corner from making big investments in recovery to making big investments in ambitious local projects.
Okay, so I'm curious because I'm trying to think through a little deeper, what will this mean? And I understand there's money for clean energy and decarbonization and infrastructure. Can you help me understand a little more about the details of those?
Sure. I think what's been so exciting about this bill is that the definition of traditional infrastructure has caught up to reality and caught up to public agency need and ambition. So, we used to just be talking about roads and bridges and water infrastructure, and now we're going a step further and we're talking about real resiliency in all sectors. So making sure that we are responding to climate change with investments in EV infrastructure, for example, for investments in smart grid technologies, taking transportation a step further and making it really smart. And also, we're now considering broadband traditional infrastructure, which I know we all feel it every day. We know it is necessary infrastructure. It's great to see the federal government making that commitment now as well.
That's helpful. So when I think about those categories, do you have a sense for how much money are we talking about in these different areas?
I do. So it's about 1.2 trillion total, and I'll give you some examples of some of the ways that funding is spent. For example, 7.5 billion for grants for electric vehicle charging stations and alternative fuel infrastructure. $250 million to reduce congestion in the busiest metropolitan areas. $65 billion for broadband infrastructure, $2.5 billion for low and zero emission bus grants. So those are just a few examples. We are sort of, we're thrilled that the bill has been signed into law, and now we're really digging deep into the details so that we can map out how customers are going to be able to access these funds going forward.
When this is great because we're doing a lot of work in each of those areas, so I'm pretty excited about that and for our partners. Do you have a sense, will these monies be distributed through the state or through municipalities? Will there be sort of a cascading? Can you help us understand what that distribution might look like?
Sure, it's going to be different for each of these funding streams. For example, it looks as though the broadband funds are going to go from NTIA at Department of Commerce to states and then down to locals. Looks like the EV infrastructure may have a more direct route to local expenditure. And a lot of these funds, like the FEMA Building Resiliency and Infrastructure funding stream, which is funded at $1 billion again in this bill, that is local applications that flow through the state, and then the state submits them to the federal government. So we will be here to demystify this and create a real roadmap for you, because I know this sort of funding creates a lot of opportunity, but it also can feel a little overwhelming. So I'm here to sort of walk through every step of it with everyone as we get more information, and then to make your application as successful and easy as possible.
Thank you. I do appreciate that. So I'm curious. I had seen a lot of the public debate about this bill and had wondered really how it would shape up in the end, and why do you think this did get passed?
I think it got passed because there was real consensus around a few different things, a few items that we, as we look towards the future, we're going to need to contend with. And I'll tell you sort of what those are. And this was again a bipartisan bill, which is fantastic because on a bipartisan basis, people came to the determination that we need to provide resilience against extreme weather, that we need to prepare for EV and decarbonization, that we need to address equity in every sense of the word. The other nice thing about this bill is that unlike some of the earlier bills, there's definitely going to be less red tape. So think more Rescue Plan Act than CARES Act. So definitely a desire to push these funds out into the economy. So less red tape and more money equals greater stimulus to the economy. And then the other really exciting thing, as I said, is that we are changing the definition of traditional infrastructure. So grid security, EV infrastructure, broadband, all things that 12 years ago, when we did the last big bill, which doesn't seem that big after all compared to what we've done in the past 18 months, those were not traditional infrastructure. It's really great that folks recognize now that is necessary and it is traditional infrastructure that we use every day.
Amanda, thank you, because this is really important for both the public sector and the private sector. These funds that are going to flow through for infrastructure, and that includes the social innovation impacts, that's really a big deal for our business and the ecosystems we're in. For example, Hitachi Energy is doing a lot with the utilities to electrify the grid, to actually make this future possible, to put those funds to use in the different communities. We're doing a lot with zero emission bus manufacturers. We're both a tier 1 supplier, but we're also doing a lot on the digital side, bringing that connected and autonomous, shared and electric future together. And I'm excited for the clean transport, the work we've been doing with the maritime ports and the airports, affect not just the jobs that people do, but the communities that they work in. And so I'm really excited, and I really appreciate your guidance, because to actually use the money to get the outcomes in a measurable way in some reasonable amount of time, I appreciate your help on that.
Oh, I'm so happy to be doing it. It's an exciting time. It really is, when federal government priorities intersect so perfectly with public agencies and their priorities and needs and ambitious goals. It's time to do some of these ambitious projects that folks have been waiting for. So I'm thrilled to be here to help walk everyone through the process, to continue to provide updates on these funds as they become available, and make sure that everyone's getting their fair share.
Thank you again, Amanda, for taking the time today to help us understand the infrastructure bill.
You're welcome.